You're good. I said. That's what I said, right? I just.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If I am accused of anything, hopefully it's of being punctual. So it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all for being here tonight. I'm sorry I used the word tax to get you out to this, but it's really a fundraiser. All right, it's not. But no, thanks to the city of Harvey, Harvey Park District, Harvey Ambulance District. I don't know if the fire district is represented yet, but it soon will be. I know they had a fire call just an hour ago, so I know they're all out doing their thing, providing a valuable service to the area. Harvey Public Schools, Wells County obviously is represented here. I want to welcome our District 14 legislators. A couple of them are here this evening as well. Wells County Tax Director Jenna Mogren is here. She's going to present here a little bit later. And certainly thanks to all of the rest of you as patrons for being here. Largely, what the purpose of this is to tackle a subject that I just think there's a lot of people who don't truly understand either their tax statements that they receive, or why the value is what it is, or what that silly mill rate is, or what have you. And I regretfully probably sound condescending in saying this. I had somebody say this to me, gosh, within the last 2 weeks, that they served in a governmental capacity, and I've seen this firsthand. I had a couple of township officers, people that had served for, I don't know, probably the last 40 years as township officers, requested to have a meeting with me a couple of weeks ago because they didn't understand mill rates. And it just got me to thinking over the course of time. I know the school went through a bond issue last year, and I had people calling me on the phone saying, is it true that my taxes will be? And it just took me aback. I mean, they weren't even close. Something that was going to cost them $158 a year, they were thinking it was going to cost them $3,000 a year. And I'm just, where do you get your information? And it just occurred to me that there's a lot of people who don't understand those things. And it is, there's a lot of information on that page. And if you'd asked me this question several years ago, I said, well, of course they do. I mean, they're property owners. How could you not know this? But it's come to my estimation that there's a whole lot of people who don't understand it. And that's what I want to tackle here tonight. The representatives of each of these subdivisions that have asked to be here tonight, I just want them to give a couple of cents worth of what their budget is, where their money comes from, where it goes to a certain extent, and none of them are going to get too far or deep into the weeds here, but that's what I want to occur. Okay, now at the end, hopefully we'll have some Q&A, and I know as a representative of Wells County and as representatives of the various political subdivisions that are here tonight, I'm sincerely hopeful that they will be able to answer their questions that you have for them, and if they can't, I would hope that they would figure out the answer and give it back to you in a reasonable amount of time. That is the goal here tonight. And at any point in time, if you have a question over anything that I am covering, I want you to please feel free to interject and ask the question. Okay? They're padded seats, so you can last a little bit longer in those, so here we go. Okay? First of all, on that handout that I've provided to you, I give you the tax dollars that are being requested by each of the political subdivisions and the mill rate that it takes to get to those totals. And then I have included here, and I'm going to reference from time to time, two different kinds of tax statements that come out, a preliminary or an estimated tax statement that you would already have received, that would have came out at the end of August. And then I'll reference a tax statement that you will get shortly after Thanksgiving. I've included my own parcels in here, my wife and I's parcels in here as a reference point to look at. Okay? and what is on that page, and we'll try and get through and define what each of those particular areas are, okay? So if you have a parcel here in Harvey, North Dakota, you are going to be a part of the city of Harvey, you're going to be a part of Harvey Park District, Harvey Ambulance, Harvey Public Schools, and Wells County. And on your prelim tax statement, it's going to separate out a couple of things. Don't ask me that question because I don't know why soil conservation is separated out, for example. No rhyme or reason for it. It's a county levy that we have for that, but nevertheless, we'll talk about those things in a bit. Then there's a couple of other ones, one that's mandated by the state of North Dakota, the State Medical Center. Everybody in the state of North Dakota pays 1 mil for that. And garrison diversion, if you're in the right part of the state, you pay a mil for that as well. If you live outside of the city limits of Harvey, or maybe it's not Harvey at all, maybe it's Besnan or Sykes and Bowdoin, Hamburg, Cathay, and Hertzfield being the other. We have 7 cities in Wells County if you choose to call Hamburg a city. But if you're not in one of those 7 cities, then of course you would have a township, whatever township you happen to live in. And then you'd have a mill rate for that as well. Okay? All right. Now, everybody that lives anywhere in Wells County is going to be a part of the county. You're going to be a part of one of those 7 cities or one of those 36 townships. And you are going to be involved, or you're going to be in a school district. Whether it's Harvey, Besnan, Bowdoin, Carrington, New Rockford, Cheyenne, or Maddock. You're going to be in one of those. Everybody in North Dakota is in a school district. And then you may or may not be in an ambulance district or a fire district. I anticipate that will change in the not too distant future. There are some black areas in the state of North Dakota that are not covered by one of those. And heck, if you live in the city of Harvey, you don't get charged for fire protection. That doesn't mean it isn't paid for. You do that partially through the taxes that you pay to the city of Harvey. Okay? Doesn't mean if you have a fire at your place and you live in Harvey, they're not coming. They will be there, okay, doing their thing. All right, so some terms that you're going to see, and I'd like you to have your finger into, you know, those pages that is a preliminary or an estimated tax statement, and it's a front back, my 2 parcels, one's on the front, one's on the back, okay? And we're gonna go through some terminology that is on there. And the first one is true and full value. And that, of course, is the value determined by considering either the earning capacity or the market value, but my experience over the course of my time paying taxes, my parcels have never been at market value. In fact, you can take a look at the values listed there. I'm pretty confident you would have to double those to even consider prying the properties out of my hands. Okay? So don't get the idea that you see the true and full value there, that's a market price in this area, because it's not. In fact, in most cases, it's not even close. I would say the same thing if you've got ag property. Ag property that's assessed, give or take, what I would say about production ag land in Wells County, typically about $1,000 an acre. Where can you buy production agricultural land in this part of the state for $1,000 an acre? You can't. You'd probably have to quintuple that to even be in the conversation. Okay? So don't get the idea that that is truly the true and full value. That is just a term used for that. All right, assessed value. That is going to be 50% of what is listed as the true and full value. So you take that T&F value, true and full, divide it in half or multiply by 0.5, you will get to the assessed value. Okay? Then with that, if it is a residential property, you multiply that by 0.09 and you come up with the taxable value of that property. If it's anything other than residential, commercial property, ag property, centrally assessed property, which would be railroads, gas and oil pipelines, electrical transmission lines, any of those types of things. Along with ag property, commercial property, you multiply by 0.1. And that's how you come up with the taxable value of a property. All right, put all those things together, on all of your different parcels that are all owned by everybody, and you come up with a total taxable value. Okay, are you with me so far? Okay. Now, if you take a look, one word that we can't get enough of here for the last handful of years has been the word inflation. Okay, and that's something that has had an impact on you personally. It's certainly had an impact on Wells County, and I'm sure we could go right down the row here for every political subdivision. It certainly had an impact on them. All right, so if inflation's been anywhere from, it's back down in a reasonable level, we'll call it that at this particular point, but it's been up to 8-9% over the last handful of years. Our valuations have certainly not kept pace with inflation. Okay, on your second page there, I've actually put the increases in valuation in Wells County. Now, this may not mean you personally. My property has gone up significantly more than some of these increases listed here. But in 2022, valuations in Wells County went up a total of 1.19%. CPI that year was 8%, Consumer Price Index. In 2023, 2.35% increase in total valuation in Wells County. CPI was not quite double that, but 4.1%. We won't know what CPI is until this year's over, but I can tell you that valuations in Wells County went up less than 1% this past year. Okay, 0.87%. Where they will be next year, I guess, I don't know. Maybe Jana can speak more towards that. She won't know, but she might be able to give you some indication of what she has knowledge in her back pocket. But so if you want to take your property and you can inject it into these scenarios, whether it's a residential property or whether it's an ag property or it's a commercial property, you can fit those things into the mathematical formula that I've provided for you, and you can take your tax statement at home, and I promise you it'll come out, okay, rounded to the nearest dollar, because we don't charge cents on these things. It will come out if you do the math correctly. And it is truly simple math. Nobody wants to hear that. Again, they claim that I'm being condescending when I say that, but it is nothing more than elementary school math. And the couple of people that I visited with in the last couple of weeks, and I feel bad about that circumstance, but one of them had been on a city council for several years. One of them had been in charge of the financials for a township for 4 decades and did not understand how mill rates work and how this information is processed. And to me, that's kind of tragic. Okay? So whether your house is worth $100,000 or $500,000, you can put it in there, you can do the math, and you should be able to figure out your taxes based on the mill rate for that particular public entity. Now, there's just a handful of things that I want to make sure you understand, because I get asked this sometimes at county commission meetings as well. So when the estimated tax statements came out at the end of August, okay, once those were printed or computed, printed, and sent out to you, those public entities, whether it's a school district or the county or a township or whatever, at that point, they cannot raise their budget up. They can go down, okay? And once in a while, you will see that. It won't be significant, don't get the wrong idea, but occasionally they will reduce. In fact, I had a couple of townships that have called me since those things were sent out and what they asked for, and they said, we got to change that down. And yep, you can adjust down, you just cannot adjust up. And don't confuse the public ask of the taxpayer with the budget. You can do anything you want with your budget as long as you have the interim funds if you're going to go above and beyond what you've asked the taxpayer for. If you've got money in a CD or a savings account or what have you, you need to spend beyond your budget. That's hardly anything novel or new. That's gone on in every level of government many times. So you can do that, but what you can't do is you can't go back to the taxpayer and ask for more. You get one chance a year to do that, okay? All right, so the estimated tax statement sent out in late August each year, if you own property, the only way you would not get a preliminary tax statement is if you don't owe at least $100. If your taxes are $82, you would not get an estimated tax statement. You'll still get a tax statement come December, but you would not get the estimated tax statement. It's set to not send to anybody unless the tax owed is at least $100. But if it's $100 or more, you would have gotten a tax statement. And on this one, it will list what taxes likely will be, and again, budgets can be reduced. They cannot be raised at that point. And it will also compare to last year's taxes. So if you have that preliminary tax statement, and it says right on the top, it says this is not a bill, that's exactly what you would have received, only it would be towards your parcel, okay? And then it will list the dates, times, and locations for the budget hearings. I believe everybody up here has held their budget hearing except Wells County. Ours will be tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. at the KTL building in Pheasant. Okay? And that's where we give you a chance to comment about the budget, and I will talk about the budget, and if you want to make comments on it, you certainly can. All right? So you will not see the Harvey Fire Department listed on here. Okay? You won't see it listed if you have a rural property. I mean, they're listed as, they don't have a budget hearing. And why don't they have a budget hearing? They don't have to. You have to collect at least 6 figures of income in taxes in order to have a budget hearing. Used to be only if you increased it, but where's our 2 legislators? Good job. I'm kidding, of course. Oh, all 3 of them are here now. Oh, look at that. Okay? Used to be only if you had an increase, you'd have to have that budget hearing, but now it's if you collect 6 figures or more, you have to have a budget hearing. Okay? All right. And then the one thing that is not going to be on your preliminary tax statement that will be on your tax statement that you get after Thanksgiving is it does not list specials. Doesn't mean there aren't specials, whether it's the water treatment plant here in Harvey or the city streets or whatever the case may happen to be. If you live in a rural area, you might be paying a special for a drain or something of that nature to get water off property and so on and so forth. So there's different kinds of specials that exist, but you will not see those on the preliminary tax statement. And the reason they're not on a preliminary tax statement is they have not even been input into the computer. That is something that's done between the time this is published and when the regular tax statement comes out in December. Okay? All right, moving on. Get to your regular tax statement, and I've also included that on the back end. There's a lot of similarities to it, and the one that I have here for you is, of course, from 2023, because taxes have not been generated for 2024 yet. It's still the preliminary stuff that appears on that preliminary tax statement. So the only way I could get you a regular tax statement was to bring one from 2023. And again, this is mine, front and back, 2 different parcels that I have. And all parcels that have value, obviously, are going to receive a tax statement. All right, so it's sent out after Thanksgiving, early December. It could conceivably be a week later than normal. We are waiting for some things that will come from the state of North Dakota that have to be put in the envelope along with this to talk about some information that you need to know. All right? So this is going to list both what the taxes and specials actually are and compare the taxes to the prior 2 years on that applicable parcel of land. All right, now this year, and this is another hats off to the legislature. If your parcel is your primary residence, this year it will show a $500 primary residence credit that comes from the state of North Dakota. And provided that your taxes are at least $500 or more, you'll get $500 credited onto your tax statement. Now, you had to apply for this, okay? And I feel bad because I'm sure the deadline was sometime in March 31st, okay? But you had to apply for this, so if it's the home that you live in, your primary residence, you can't get it on your lake cabin. You can't, you know, if you don't pay taxes on that home, obviously you can't get that either, and there are some scenarios by which you may not have taxes on that home. And also, if your tax is only $419, you don't get $81 handed back to you as an additional credit. It will just wipe out your $419 of tax. So up to $500. So on my particular 2 parcels, that's 13% of my tax bill. That's pretty substantial when you start giving $500 back. All right, so that's a really nice thing. So my taxes are actually going down in 2024. And I would guess most people who have just a primary residence as their parcel, your taxes are absolutely going down. Are they going down $500? I didn't say that. All I said is they're going down, and that $500 is the reason for that. Okay, so that is a big deal. All right, also on there, okay, it's going to provide you a breakdown of what is going to each taxing district that your property is located in. And it will also compare the last 2 years of tax distributions to that particular entity. Okay? And then, of course, you get all the information on the options of how to pay and what the deadlines are and so on and so forth. And it slays me, but the vast majority of people do pay their property taxes by February 15th. And if you pay your property taxes by February 15th, you get another 5% discount. So between that and the primary residence credit, that's chopping off just about a fifth of your tax bill. That's pretty impressive. But also have to have a number of people who don't pay their taxes by that particular time. And I don't understand the wisdom of that because everybody's looking for a break, and I totally get that. Okay? But if you don't pay, then of course it will also tell you what the interest will ultimately be and what the deadlines are and what the ramifications, and if this goes on for 3 years, what happens there, and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into all those things tonight, although you may have a question on it later. I get that. Okay? So that is your regular tax statement. Again, you'll see those sometime between Thanksgiving and probably the 10th of December, but Wells County is usually one of the first counties to get theirs out. I saw very few on our listserv that had December 1st as their goal. We were one of those. So it's going to be close to that, but again, we've got to wait for some stuff to come from the state of North Dakota to include in that. Any questions so far? We making sense?
You had said that some people don't have to pay taxes. Who's that?
What I said, you know, is you may not have a tax bill. Maybe you have disabled veterans credit, maybe you have homestead credit, maybe obviously with the primary residence credit, you may not owe any taxes.
Okay, what if their land is actually back to their original land patent? Can you tax that?
That would be a question that I could not answer for you right now because I'm not sure what you're asking. So, anything else? All right, moving on. So, on your tax statement, just want to touch on a handful of different things that are on here so you make sure we know what that is. Obviously, in the upper left-hand corner, you have a parcel number. That's how the county identifies, and all 53 of our counties and other states as well all have a numerical way of identifying every piece of property. So mine happen to be the ones that you see up there. So that identifies your property. The jurisdiction to the right of that is a sequence of 5 numbers. In Wells County, only 4 of those numbers mean anything. That first number, 80, stands for the city of Harvey. It could be the city of Feznan, Bowden, the 7 cities that we have, or the 36 townships. That is going to be that first number. Always. Okay? Second number, 038 here, is the school district. That's Harvey Public Schools. If you're in Feznan, Bowden, it'll say 025. If you're in Rockford, it'll say 002, or Maddock, 009. Nobody in here, I don't imagine, in the Carrington School District, but it would say 049 if it happened to be theirs. The third number in that is going to be the fire district. Okay? And again, City of Harvey, even though it does not list a fire district, does not mean the City of Harvey does not collect anything. It's just paid, in our case, through the City of Harvey and not directly through taxes. Okay? The fourth number is not applicable in Wells County. It's always gonna be 00. And the final two numbers there is the ambulance district, and that happens to be the Harvey Ambulance District. If you lived over in the Manfred area, you'd be sneaking into the Fessenden Ambulance District, or down by Bowden, or what have you. And it is possible, depending upon where you live, that you don't have any numbers there either. Okay? I don't think the ambulance service would stiff you, but you're not in the area. And I do anticipate, and maybe one of the legislators would comment on this, I anticipate everybody in the state of North Dakota eventually will be in an ambulance district and a fire district. I don't know if you're prepared to comment on that. Robin, you would probably be the best person on this one.
They already have.
That's in process now. And I will say this, in north central Wells County, which is the Maddox territory, and in the eastern, northeastern part, that's in Rockford Ambulance Territory, they are in the process of organizing their ambulance districts right now. Maddox just did theirs, and Rockford, I anticipate, will have their vote in February of 2025, I believe. So next year, Wells County will at least be covered. But, so that is the case already. All right. Okay. Moving on, of course, you have the owner, the legal owner. Now, anybody can pay the taxes. Okay, and believe it or not, I have some of these scenarios. But paying the taxes is never going to make you the owner. Never going to make you the owner. If you're going to be the owner of a parcel of land, you have to record a deed. I see Carrie sitting over there, her eyes just got wide open. She's the county recorder, so she would have to do that for you. But I've got people that pay the taxes and can't figure out why they don't own the property. You're never going to own that property until you record a deed. And to do that, obviously, you got to be up to date on your taxes. Buying real estate of any kind is actually a legal circumstance and has to be documented as a result of that. All right, and then of course you got the physical address where the property is actually located, the legal description, that is the property location. That would include like city addition, or the lot number, or the block number, or a rural section, township, range, quarter, etc. All of those things are part of the legal description. And then the legislature requires that you put on there the legislative tax relief, and that's the buying down of school mills. When I first started as a superintendent, I don't know, about 20 years ago, not quite, but our mill rate, max mill rate at that time was 185. Okay, that's changed a lot, and that's because of legislative buy down of those mills. First it went to 110, and now it is down to 70 is your max. Okay, so those are substantially lower than they used to be, and they'll show you on your tax statement what the buy down is from the legislature for school taxes. And then your tax distribution, those are the terms that I talked about earlier, true and full value, taxable value. If you are eligible for a homestead credit or a disabled veterans credit, and I will tell you if that's, geez, I don't know if I'm eligible. That's your person to see right down there at the end, Jana Mogren from the tax director's office in Wells County. And she'd be happy to visit with you about that, whether it's here or call her in her office or whatever the case may be. She can help you through that. All right, and then net taxable value, and then your taxes by the respective districts that your property happens to reside in, whether it's county, city or township, school district, ambulance if that's applicable to you, fire if that's applicable to you, and anything that is designated by the state, and that being, of course, the state medical center. All right, then your consolidated tax is the sum of all the tax that is owed, your net effective tax rate, which is your consolidated tax divided by your true and full value. And last year on my property, that come out to be 1.35%. I think that's, wow, I should maybe not comment on that, but I do know this, if I am gonna go purchase something, sales tax is gonna be what? when you pay the state and the city or wherever you happen to be? Typically in North Dakota, 7%, 1.35. Okay, I'll leave that up to you. All right, and then your due dates, penalties and interest for delinquency, all of those things are on there. Where, when, how, and to whom to make a payment is all included on here. All right, don't know if you know this, but you can go on Wells County's website. All right, there will be a link right on the front page that can take you to, well, actually, you can look at any property in the state of North Dakota if the county uses that system. But Wells County does. If you want to go on there and click on that, type in your name. This is public record, which is why I don't mind that you see my tax statement. But if you want to see anybody's tax statement, you can. It's public record. Okay? All right. Now, mill rate. This is the total mills applied to the total cumulative taxable value to determine the total taxes that you owed. If you lived in the city of Harvey in 2023, your cumulative tax rate would be just like mine. It would be 299.33 mills. Okay, if you lived outside of the city of Harvey, if you lived in a rural area, yours is going to be considerably lower. You're going to trade the city's taxes for a township tax, which is way lower. But as a result, you're going to have far less services as well. Okay? And all in all, I can tell you in 2024, and this is only an estimate, okay? It's gonna be something more like 325.38. And yeah, that's an increase, and you probably think that's a pretty significant increase. I'm not gonna debate that. But I also talked to you about valuations that are way behind the consumer price index, way behind inflation. Although hopefully that is more under control now, but who knows? Tomorrow's promised to nobody. So that's an 8.7% increase. And when you look at it, one of these charts up here, and this isn't all about my presentation tonight, but one of these charts up here is lowered taxes in 2023. And if you looked on there, Wells County would be one of those. Lowered their mill rate. Okay, in fact, we've lowered our mill rate for 3 years in a row. That will not be the case in 2024. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is also. Okay, our cost of doing business goes up just like yours personally is going up. Okay? Do you have any questions at this point? Because I'm going to take a break. Yes, ma'am.
What is a mill? Is it rated as cents or?
It's 0.001. You kind of have to be my age or younger, which I'm not telling you what that is. You got to figure it out yourself. No. I got to about 5th grade, and metric system became a big deal. Now, mills had been in place long before that. This was in the 70s. But that's what a mill is, 0.001. And that's why you'll see it in the mathematical formula times 0.001. But that's what a mill is. And I'll give you a good example of what will a mill generate. If the valuation of a tax district is $100,000, okay, a mill is going to generate 10 bucks. You just move that decimal, actually you move it 3 spots. What did I say, 100,000? Well, that'd be $100. You move it 3 spots to the left. So the taxable valuation in Wells County is $47,464,346. So if we move that decimal 3 spots to the left, 1 mill in Wells County will generate $47,464 and change. And that's the easiest way I can get you there for 1 mill. Okay? Any other questions? If not, I'm actually going to allow Jana Mogren, Wells County Tax Director, to come forward, and she's going to talk about the assessed value of the property. And if you want to get lost in the weeds, now's your chance.
Thanks. While it's still fresh in your mind, the primary residence credit will be available to be submitted again in January for the 2025 year. It will need to be submitted through the state tax commissioner's website, You will need your parcel number, your address, and your social security number. Anybody who receives a 100% homestead credit, meaning that the state covers those property taxes under that credit, if you're paying $0 because of that credit, you will not receive a primary residence credit. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about property values for just a little bit. I had this PowerPoint that I made up, and I handed it out so that if later you have questions, my number's in there, you can call me at any time. So there are 3 types of property valuations. There's agricultural, commercial, and residential that I deal with. Agricultural values are not based on sales. If they were based on sales, you would need a significant increase. Right now, what our agricultural values are listed at is 28% of what the sales are indicating. In fact, in the last couple of months, we've been seeing anywhere from $6,500 to $7,500 in acre sales. It's a thing. Whereas my valuations are right around that $1,000 or less dollars per acre. NDSU utilizes a formula to determine the capitalized average annual gross return. This handout is the formula that NDSU uses. There are 3 main factors that NDSU considers: the production data, which is the annual gross returns for cropland and non-cropland. The higher the production rates, the higher the valuations will be. The cost of production index factors into agricultural land by reducing landowners' share of gross returns. Basically, they are giving a reduction due to the costs to grow crops and graze animals. The higher the cost of production contributes to lower valuations. The capitalization rate is based on a 10-year average of mortgage rates on North Dakota farm land loan determined by AgriData or AgriBank mortgage rate of interest rates of North Dakota. A lower capitalization rate means higher agricultural values. So once NDSU tells me what dollar per acre I need to be at, I have to go and I have to find all the soil types for Wells County. There are 168 soil types within the county. These soil types and productivity index numbers are derived from the Web Soil Survey through NRCS. There are 3 classifications for ag land: cropland, non-cropland, and wetland. Each of these classifications have a different dollar per acre. It's all based on soil types. So if our valuations are not within a tolerance of 90 to 100% of the average dollar per acre that the state tells me they have to be at, the State Board of Equalization will increase us to 93%. So for example, agricultural values. A parcel has 80 acres, there's 3 soil types. Each soil type, as you can see, has a different dollar per acre. So 20 acres of one soil type at $845.66 would be one value. The final valuation would be the sum of all of the soil types' final valuations. That is literally agricultural values in a nutshell. For valuing residential and commercial properties, I have to do what is called a sales ratio report. All of the sales that come in through my office have to be submitted to the State Board of Equalization on a yearly basis. We identify whether they are agricultural, commercial, or residential. And these, whatever the median ratio is when you divide your sales price into your true and full value, is going to give you a percentage. And the median percentage is going to tell me whether I need to increase, decrease, or stay the same for residential and commercial properties. This does not mean that that percentage needed for an increase is going to be applied to every single property the same. Some properties can go up, some can go down, some can stay the same. It's gonna depend on the sales and what they are indicating, such as style of the house, the condition of the house, the age of the house. All these are factors in determining a value. For land values, Harvey City is valued at $125 a front foot, and Pheasant sits at $100. It's about 10 to 20% of what a sales price is for that residential value, or sale, excuse me. We have to determine grades for each property. There are 7 grades, anything from executive down to a grade 6, which is substandard quality. The next 3 pages are examples. An E-grade house you will not find in Wells County. You might find a handful of grade 2s. Generally, you will find grade 3 and grade 4s. And there's a handful of 5s and 6. Basically, 4 would be an average ranch style 3-bedroom, 1 or 2 bath house. It's average, considered average, maybe 12 to 1,300 square feet. We also have to determine depreciation. Physical depreciation results from factors which affect the physical condition of the structure. This is a loss in value due to normal wear and tear, age, or natural elements. The condition that may be placed on a structure is contingent on how well the structure has been maintained. So there are 9 different depreciations that can be used, anything from excellent to very poor. If you maintain your property, you're likely at a normal or above normal condition. If you, I don't know, let's say that nothing's been done to the property in 50 years and it's starting to fall apart, then you're gonna be at a fair or poor condition. Finally, we also have to determine a map area. So what we're doing is we are placing a map area factor on the properties, and in Harvey, it's at 95%. So if I come up with a value of $100,000, a 95% map area is going to put that valuation at $95,000. Every city and township has a different map area. We have to value based on our highest and best market, which is Harvey. And then the further you get away from that market, the more map area factor you're going to have. So Sykeston is sitting at a 60%. Pheasant is at a 90%. So everything has a different percentage. Commercial is valued very similar to residential. The only difference being is that you have many different commercial structures that are utilized differently. You're not going to value a hotel the same that you're going to value an automobile repair shop. So we have to identify the best use for that property. So if it's a hotel, we're gonna value it as a hotel. If it's an automobile, we're gonna value it as an automobile. And in some situations, you can have repair shops as well as offices, and you're going to identify both, and it's both gonna have a different value. So, if you want to skip just a couple of pages, I'll come back to those. Since Dan used his statement, tax statement, I used his property card. I have circled everything that I went through. There's 2,628 square feet of livable space, okay? It is a split-story structure. That means that I have to put a livable space on the top and the bottom, the basement as well. It is a 3-grade home. it's an above normal condition, and the depreciation is at 23%. These are all of the things that we look at, and I look at every time that I have to do a revaluation, which is every year, based on the sales. Whatever somebody is paying for another property is what's going to determine whether I need to, compared to my valuations, is what I need to determine whether I need to increase, decrease, or to stay the same from one year to the next. And I don't look at just the county as a whole, I look at each individual city and districts of townships. So, finally, there are a couple of different credits that I wanted to speak about. The homestead credit is available to individuals who are 65 years of age or older or permanently disabled. If you are permanently disabled, being under the age of 65, you do need a physician's certificate with your application. This is a yearly application and is based on income and medical expenses. When filling out an application, if you are, for instance, filling out an application for 2024, you need to use your 2023 income and medical expenses. Medical expenses include anything paid out of pocket for supplemental insurance premiums, nursing home insurance premiums, eyeglasses, dentures, dentists, all of that. You cannot use your car insurance. You cannot use your property taxes as a medical deduction. Only what is paid out of pocket for medical.
But you can can you the mileage?
Yes, you can use the mileage going back and forth to and from a doctor, of any sort, yes. If your income minus your medical expenses is less than $70,000, you will qualify for this credit. There are two brackets. If you make between $0 and $40,000, you would receive 100% credit up to $9,000 of taxable value. And if you are between $40,000 and $1 to $70,000, you would receive a 50% credit of a reduction of $4,500 in taxable value. The other credit I wanted to talk to you about was the veterans credit. This credit is available for any veteran who is 50% or more disabled due to a service-connected disability. This credit is also available to the surviving spouse of a disabled veteran. The applicant must own and reside in the property being applied for. A copy of the veteran's DD 214 is required. It is a confidential document and it stays confidential. The applicant must also provide a certificate from the Department of Veterans Affairs certifying to the percentage of non-connected disability. Again, this document stays confidential. If the veteran already receives a credit of less than 100% and they are increased due to service-connected disability, you can apply for an increase in that credit. My office handles all of the applications for homestead credit and veterans credits, and you can still apply for 2024. You can still apply for 2023, but you have to let me know so that I can either help you fill it out or at least send you an application, because you won't get it if you don't apply. Any questions?
What's the name and address of your office?
My name is Jana Mogren. I'm the Wells County Director of Tax Equalization. The last, in this packet, it does have my phone number to my office.
Good.
That's it.
Thank you, Jana. And again, if you have a question for Jana and you still want to ask it, we will have a Q&A here a little bit later. So with that, we are going to, I'm going to have each of the reps here talk a little bit about their political sub, whichever one they happen to represent. And yeah, I fully anticipate they're going to be a little bit territorial. and want to protect the interests of the organization, but every one of them has or is of extreme importance, so I hope you will listen to them and listen to what they have to share with you, and we'll start with Harvey Public Schools and Dr. Robert Lukens.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for all of you to come out tonight. I did try to walk around and have a handout for people of what I'm going to kind of go through. I have some extras here if somebody didn't get them, or if you don't have one next to you or near you. Here we go.
Thank you.
I have a few extra as well, so if you don't want to ask for one right now, just come and ask me after, and it's going to be the same information as I'm going to share. So I was really excited about this opportunity because I get to teach, and a lot of times I don't get in front of a classroom anymore, and I'll get to do that second semester, but try to make it as simple as possible on that sheet, just simple where, what, why, and how. Answer those questions for you, okay? So where is the Harvey Public School District? We are, as you can see, predominantly in Wells County. We do extend into Pierce, Benson, and Sheridan counties, although a majority of our value of our land is in Wells County. We do go, if you look at our map, I like to say we're a bouquet of flowers, because we go all the way down to the Kidder County line, and then we go all the way up into Pierce County, and it kind of looks like a bouquet of flowers like you would be holding a bouquet of flowers. That's the shape of our district. And so due to the numbers, these numbers are different than what he had there, because we had a little bit of a drop in our centrally assessed property. So you can see I have a little asterisk there because there was a changing mill rate, but we in August figured at about $24,429,960 in our total value, which comes back down to $24,429.96 in our value of a mill in our district across all of our properties. So if you look and you can see, again, I thought that was a great explanation. It's a thousandth, right? Mill, thousandth. So you think of millennium, right, is 1,000 years. It's just a mill, so it's a thousandth of the total value of all of our property. And so then the what is, this year, we're going to levy roughly 84.98. Now again, on his handout, he had 85.11, which was a change in our centrally assessed properties. They went down in value a little bit, so then when we requested dollars, those dollars were we needed more mills to cover the dollars we requested. So therefore the mill rate changes. In schools, you can look down here on the next point, we have different funds. We have building funds, general fund, special reserve fund, and miscellaneous fund. The general fund is guaranteed by the state. So therefore, we are at our cap, almost totally at our cap for 70 mills, and we levy some miscellaneous funds. We levy one in the special reserve, and we levy some in the building. So we are subject to changing mill rates because only the general fund is guaranteed by the state in value. So the value we request in the general fund is guaranteed, but every other fund is not. So therefore, we have to have a little bit of savings, because ultimately, if the mills keep changing, as you saw, our values go down, okay, or they can go down, and we won't have as much revenue, and that's just the way it works. State will contribute about $3,851,994 revenue to our budget, and the federal government will contribute about $236,175 to our budget as well. And so the why of that is our current general fund budget costs about $6,070,045. And how do we spend those dollars? What are the dollars of our school district going to? Well, you can see 83% of it is going to staff, salary, and benefits. That's down 5% for us. And so then we have about 6.3% of our budget goes to supplies to support our staff and our kids. That's so almost 90% of what we spend is spent on staff and students. The rest, so 4.8%, is spent on maintenance of property, about $295,000. About 2.6 of that is purchase services such as postage, telephone, other things like that at about $158,000. And then the rest of that 3.3% is something, like water and sewer, equipment repair, like if something were to break, a bus were to break, those type of things are in that 3.3% on the last end there. So again, 90% of what we're spending is going to be on the staff and the students. About the rest of the 10% is kind of on 5% of that is on our property, which is our high school and elementary school, and then the rest comes down here. And that is how the breakdown of how our budget works and what we spend our money on. Yeah, if there's anybody who else would like this handout, feel free to ask me.
All right, thank you, and I am not sure which one of you two is gonna tackle the Harvey ambulance, but I'm just gonna go ahead and call on you next.
Yeah, it'll be
Susan,
me.
is that gonna be you?
Yeah,
All
it'll
right.
be me.
All right. You guys thumb wrestled and you lost.
Yeah, well, So, for those of you who are new to the area, or I should say the Harvey Ambulance District is new to this area. It was established in 2016. Prior to 2016, the Harvey Ambulance Service was a nonprofit, run on their own service. Well, it was almost impossible for them to maintain. So they went through the process of going through and getting a district established. Wells County is very unique because we actually in Wells County have 3 ambulance services. Bowdoin has their own service, Fessenden has their own service, and then the Harvey Ambulance District covers Sheridan, part of McLean. It used to be a part of Benson, but I believe Benson backed out of it, although we will cover them if they call. And then the rest of Wells County, and Pierce.
McHenry.
And McHenry County. So, we have a board of, a representative from each one of those, towns, or counties. So, so the taxing, all these counties get the same tax levy that we are getting here. We had our budget meeting last week. I wish you would have all come for that, so you would have seen. I don't have a handout. I have it with me if you want to see. Just like everything else, especially equipment, the cost has gone up enormously. We have about a $277,000 shortfall this year from what we take in and what we have to pay out, which is approximately what our budget payroll is. We are just about fully staffed, am I correct?
Yep.
Couple paramedics.
We have 5 right
5 paramedics. So if you watch the news, we are very fortunate for a rural community to have the ambulance service that we have. The county or the district or the ambulance service, I always have to remember these are 2 separate entities. The district takes in the money, we contract with the Harvey Ambulance Service, and that money that we take in is then paid to the Harvey Ambulance Service. So the district really carries about a $200 balance in their checkbook. When our tax dollars come in, it goes to the service because the service needs the money. It shouldn't sit in our checking account. Just a couple of things, and I have a little bit more information that we can share afterwards if you want to visit with me, but they just in what they have had to buy this last year, An auto pulse, which is, provides compression during CPR. It's a $22,000 piece of machinery. And thankfully, the Animal Civic Center and North Dakota NDCF gave grant money for that, so that did not come out of anybody's pocket. And then a load cot to get the cots into the ambulances, it's a $26,000 bill. Again, the Eagles gave us a grant for that, for the service grant. Tammy Susag does their books for them, and she writes grants like no tomorrow. This woman puts and writes and writes and writes, and there's a lot of money in here that, do you know off the top of your head how much dollars she's gotten grant money?
I don't.
It has to be close to $50,000 in grants that she gets, that she writes. We don't get any state funds other than grants if we write them. Everything comes from what comes in from insurance and payments, just like hospitals. You send a bill to Blue Cross and Blue Shield for $1,000 and they pay you $600 and you write the rest off. So those are losses that the service takes every year. And so that has to be made up, and that's where these tax dollars come from. I don't know, there isn't a lot to say. The district is relatively new, but it was in trouble for a while. And I think that we're on the right path now, mostly because nobody comes to our meetings. And so that tells me that no one's worried about it. About 5 years ago, people were worried that we wouldn't have an ambulance service in this town. And we were at that point. And so that's, and the other thing is we are just about at the maximum of the tax mills that we can have. If you see 10 is ours, 10, correct, no, we can have 10. We're at 9.73 now with this year. So I don't anticipate things getting cheaper. And so it's gonna be a budget crunch next year when we look at our budget. And I don't know where we can cut, because what we cut will affect the people that we serve, and we don't wanna do that. And I look around this room and I know each and every one of us someday are probably gonna need this service, and we want it to be here for us.
When is your meeting?
It was last.
No, but I mean, when is your
It's published, we have an annual meeting, we have to have the first 3 months of the year, so we'll have one we usually do it in February, which is just an annual meeting, and we will probably elect, board members at that point in time, because there are some that are up. And then we will have our budget hearing again in September of next year, so that we can go over our budget again to get the numbers. We'll give a preliminary number to Dan before then, usually a lot higher than what we want, just so we are covered. And then we'll go through everything again, so. But, and there's, we've got the numbers here if you wanna look at them, you're more than welcome to, so. If anyone has any questions, Dan Wilcox is with me tonight. He may have to run out, he's on call. And so there's probably a rig sitting outside, I don't know. No, you didn't have to bring a rig tonight, so. We've talked about that, we've had our meetings out here. Nobody comes, and then they have to bring the rigs out and rigs back. We may have to change that, we may change that if no one's interested in coming to the meetings. We may just start doing them at the service. And then if they get called, they're where they need to be to go. And that has happened when we've had our meetings. Oh, I will share this with you. Calls in 2023, they had from January to September, 279 calls. That's how many calls they went out on. From January to December of 24, they had 302. So these crews are busy.
We're on track for 400 this year.
And you're on track for 400 calls this year. And like I'm saying, Bowdoin has their own area they cover. Fessenden has their own area that they cover. So, look at the cost of what fuel has been. I mean, those rigs are big, and just maintenance, keeping them up, there's a lot of expenses, so. Okay, thank you.
Susan,
Yes.
I got one question.
Yes.
You operate as a basic life support ambulance, or is it advanced life support?
Here, I'm gonna let Daniel answer this, because this is, yes, here you go.
Okay, so she got through the hard part, which was all the numbers. I wanted her to be the one that handles that a lot better with it. So we license as a BLS agency. We have ALS capabilities. So this actually touches on what I wanted to express tonight. We're at the point where if none of our medics take a day off, we have 24/7 paramedic on call. So even though we license as a BLS agency, we have full ALS capabilities.
Explain to people what the difference.
Yeah. So what that means, so you have BLS providers, which are EMTs, can give some basic medications, nothing really invasive, but handle essentially 80% of the job, which is. Oh, okay. Can you hear me better? So as an EMT does basic life support, that's kind of just trauma care, a few medications. You get up to an advanced EMT, they can do a few more things. When you get to a paramedic, essentially you can have full emergency care at bedside. Now that's very important, because if you have someone who, especially if someone who's in cardiac arrest, sorry, I'm not used to microphones. If you have someone who's in cardiac arrest, there are now 20 to 25 minutes of medications and therapies that can be provided in the house that otherwise would have to be provided at the hospital. It would take time to get those. We're able to put that at the bedside now. Pain management, someone who is actively vomiting, if someone needs cardiac therapy, we can do a number of things in the field that don't have to wait till you get to the hospital anymore. We provide a lot of ALS intercepts for other BLS agencies, so if Maddock is transporting to Harvey, Bowdoin, Fessenden, they will sometimes call us to intercept with them, start doing those advanced therapies in their truck before they even get to the hospital. And then also, you have some people at hospitals who need to get to larger ones, right? We have a great hospital here, but they can't take care of everything. Sometimes people need to get transferred out. Sometimes they need advanced life support care while they're on the transfer. Previously, go years back before we had the mill levy, before we had a lot of medics here, we had a lot of stuff that had to fly that doesn't need to fly, because that was the only access to advanced life support care. Whereas now, we're able to take those by ground, we're able to keep that as a service we provide locally. And, you know, I can't say I've ever been on the receiving end of a bill from flight, but you don't have to go through that. If we have the stuff we can take care of that patient with, we're able to go with our own agency. So, are there any questions in regards to more of the operational side of what we do?
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Never gonna cut it as an entertainer, Daniel, but if I have a heart attack, I want you there. Okay?
I don't want to be an entertainer. Thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna call on Michelle Swan, gonna talk a little bit about the Harvey Park District.
The Harvey Park District takes care of Westside Park in Harvey, which is the campground that's in the city. We take care of Memorial Park, which is the Stutlien Park, some people know it as, with the train. And we take care of Veterans Memorial Park, which is the ballpark. We also have Pioneer Park, which includes the swimming pool. So we pay for the maintenance of those. We also maintain Schroeder Park, which is the Harvey Dam area. We receive our funds, we receive $3,000 for that from North Dakota Game and Fish and $2,500 from Wells County Watershed District. The majority of our funds come from county taxes. Our budget for our expenditures in 23 were at $361,764. For 25, we're budgeting for $322,000, right around there. We also receive funds from donations, grants. We receive revenue from our swimming pool, which the revenue received from the swimming pool is not enough to cover our expenses with the swimming pool. For instance, last year, the swimming pool cost us almost $78,000 to run by the time we paid for repairs and staff and just general operating expenses. And our income from the pool was shy of 24,000. So, I guess we rely on the county taxes to provide these services to our community. Any questions?
Thank you, Michelle. All right, we'll go right to the city of Harvey. Is that still a thing?
Hi, I'm Karen Nordby, and our 2025 city budget is 4.2 million. We tax 458,680 for 94.03 mills. And I could go through a lot of the mills things, but I think you've already heard enough of the mills. I'll go dollars. It's easier when we talk dollars. So we levy for the general fund, which takes care of our police, our fire department. Our police budget is, in 2025, we have about $395,000. Our fire department's budget is about almost $50,000. We levy for the general fund $390,000. So that's kind of where we get those guys covered from. We levy for our emergency fund, which would be things like some of the extra cost of generators that we've put in, radios, those kind of things are emergency. Our recreation, to go along with the park board, we levy $15,300. Not a huge amount. The library, as we work through that, we levy $23,500 for the levy. The airport gets a levy of $7,500. We levy $3,000 for economic development. And then for special assessments, we levy $17,340. So that's kind of our levying dollars. Our levies is about 10% of our budget. The rest of our budget comes from things such as debt service, which we all know, our street project, our water treatment plant project, those are all debt service that we have. A big chunk of our budget goes to wages and benefits, that's about 34%. Maintenance and supplies is about 8%. Project development's about 8%, and we have about 22% for other. I broke down things like our public works department, which includes the water, the sewer, our garbage. They're about $760,000, 19% of our budget. Street budget, including reserves, is $286,000. Economic development, which is something we need to grow here, is $689,000, which includes our childcare facility that's in there. The recreation budget is $41,000. Our library budget is $115,000. Our airport budget is about $46,000. Debt service, we're at $1.1 million. I mean, we kind of go on and on to continue to run our small city of, according to this state, we're at 1,600 people. I think they missed a few, I don't know. I guess all the things that Dan didn't talk about, but we feel in the city of Harvey, you know, we receive just state aid from the state, another $163,000 that they're already giving us to help us do business. And of that money, we give 15% to the park board. And so we give a little of our state aid to share with them. You know, the library gets some state aid for another $1,300. We get highway tax distribution money, about $185,000 that we use to plow our streets, to take care of our roads. I mean, the state is coming through and paying us those money in various other areas. So that kind of goes through my budget, what we have. Any other questions? I can give you any other information. I'm kind of a budget guru, as Jen is with her assessments. I like budgets, so I could do budgets for hours, but it's late and don't want to bore you either.
Karen?
Yeah.
The Prairie Dog bucket is filling up. Would you know what your payment's going to be? I think that's gonna fill by the end of the year.
That's a great question, thank you. So I think we're about $125,000 is our payment. You know, we just finished a $900,000 sewer relighting. That was all our Prairie Dog money and our ARPA money that we had collected together. That did not go on to anybody's taxes. We didn't pay any other fees but state money to pay for. We did a trunk line. It was only 5, 6, maybe 10 blocks in the end. But that's our main trunk line. If we get this sewer done, it's just another project that we've accomplished. So yeah, and we'd like to continue to do, if Prairie Dog money keeps coming, we'd like to continue doing more sewer with it. That's kind of our thought.
It will if the measure fails.
What is Prairie Dog money?
You've seen it, Brenda.
I shoot them. What is
You
it?
don't wanna shoot this
Part of the
one.
legacy fund.
Yeah, John, you wanna take a moment and talk about the Prairie Dog money? You could probably do better than I can.
Well, simply, it's oil money that was given back to, in the production tax formula. Oil counties got replacement property tax money over the years. Prairie Dog has been around for what, maybe six years or so? And it fills with every month when the oil revenue comes in. There's several buckets that fill. It will be, I'm told it'll be filled by the end of this year. And counties and cities are both, and townships get money as well from Prairie Dog. So when you go through this cycle, as long as things don't change, it'll start to fill again in subsequent bienniums. So that 150,000 or whatever that number is in Harvey, it's certainly more than that. I'm sure it's closer to $1 million in the county.
$1.954 million.
Okay, and that's real money, and that will be. I mean, and seriously, I don't know how we would continue to fund Prairie Dog if the property tax measure passes.
And how far did $1.954 million go for it? 7 miles of the Ring Sail Road.
Yeah, the racetrack,
That
my
was,
house now.
that was, yes, you do. So, right out to Susan's afterwards. But no, that's what almost $2 million got us, is 7 miles of overlay on County Highway 5, which was in deplorable condition, so. All right, I see some gentlemen just rolled in from the fire district, so now they're rolling right out the door. How's that for timing? You guys would be next. Scott, you have anything you wanna share, or Ryan, I didn't even see you standing there.
They all look like they're scared.
I mean, not really. We're funded from the city and rural, so I just help run the department. They give us the money we need to do our job. And that's a big part. We have good equipment, we have good guys, and there's a reason for that. And stuff keeps getting more expensive for us to do our job.
Okay, I'm gonna check your Hornet spirit here. Who was at the homecoming parade a couple weeks ago? Raise them up high. All right. The ambulance district and the fire district led that parade along with local law enforcement. With what they collect in tax revenue, you couldn't even buy a fraction of any one of those vehicles, let alone that entire fleet that we saw roll down Brewster Street and Lincoln Avenue that day. So the things that they have done with the funds that they receive is nothing short of a minor miracle. So hats off to both of those entities.
The service just bought a new transfer unit, paid for it in full for $188,000. That was just a transfer unit. And so,
As well,
yes,
the rural just purchased a new truck as well.
yeah, and a lot of that came with donations and a lot of hard work from the service.
What'd the truck go for?
450 to 475, 475,000.
Oh,
That's without any equipment.
I was thinking $5, I'd get you a couple. All
You're
right.
probably about 500,000 by the time you put poles and everything on it.
So yes, hats off to both of those services. They do an incredible job. Now, it wasn't my intent necessarily. I did invite a number of people from townships, because obviously there are some rural people living or that are in this room that live in a rural area that are represented by a township as opposed to a city. Richard, being a big wheel in the Township Association, do you want to share anything from the township perspective with the folks that are here? Because there are people here that live out in the country.
Do the mic?
And a spotlight?
No. Yeah, I represent North Dakota Township Auditor Association District 2, which Harvey is in. I don't know, nobody likes paying taxes, but I think it's a necessary evil, and I think they've done a good job of explaining here. I've been talking to Jana for years about this, and I get the same feeling. Most people don't understand how it works, and I think this is good. I think you need to dig into your tax statement and study it a little bit. At least then you know where your money's going and who's getting what. Any questions for me as township? Everyone says taxes never go down. Well, I can show you in our tax statement, our township taxes went down, and we didn't need the money, so we lowered our levy. So you have the power to lower your taxes. Not that it happens very often.
You don't have Pheasant Co-op's new Hamburg station in your township, do you?
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right.
That helps.
Makes sense. And not to be outdone, Dale Schmitz, anything you want to add? We, as the county commission and as my liaison for them with the public and so on, we met with all 36 townships this past summer. And Dale was at all of those meetings. I couldn't hardly believe it. When he goes to sleep at night, he hears my voice. But no, the townships have their role, and they've seen their costs go up, and it is a struggle, but it's also a struggle for the county. And I'm going to talk just a little bit of Wells County here. I'm definitely not going to get too far in the weeds with this, but Wells County supports 27 different county departments and special revenue funds that we have. And I'm not going to list all 27 of them, but certainly my office, which is the auditor's office, county health, district health, emergency management, the extension agency, historical society, the fair board, the state's attorney's office, the road department, Wells Sheridan Aging, the water board, the weed board. We now have because we voted on it, we have a stake in the library here in Harvey. It's now a county library. So that's just a handful of the things, but again, there are 27 different departments or special revenue funds. And our funding comes primarily from property taxes. We are the big bully on your sheet, no question about it, but we cover the entire county. And we have been pretty static in our mill rate, but as I mentioned earlier, it's definitely headed north here in 2024. And it's just because our valuations haven't changed. And one of the things that I took out of those meetings with the 36 townships in Wells County, and Dale certainly could vouch for me on this because he was at all 9, and that's why I pointed that out. When we went out and shared with the townships where we were at with our road department in Wells County, which is hemorrhaging red ink, I'm not gonna lie to anybody here, to the tune of about $50,000 to $60,000 a month. Yeah, that's correct, okay? One of the things the township said, and it was every single one of them, do not cut our services. We don't care what you have to do. If you need to raise taxes, okay? Whatever you have, do not cut our services. In fact, there was only one comment that was made amongst all of those 36 townships. And Wade, please don't be offended by this. Get rid of that damn fair. Well, obviously, that's somebody that doesn't care for the fair, and that's fine, you have your prerogative on that. But I look at the fair in the same way that I look at the swimming pool, the same way I look at the theater, the same way I look at restaurants in Harvey, things of that nature. Those things are all quality of life issues. I'm not a big fair attender either, but I'm happy to support it because it's an important and vital part of the fabric of our society, in the same way that a swimming pool is, and same, and those things cost money to operate, and you can have your opinion on them. My opinion is, yeah, I'm always gonna be supportive of those things. And when she mentioned economic development, you bet. It's always good to bring things back into, rather than see things get up and leave. So that's what we do. Where does our money come from? Again, most of it comes from property taxes, but we too are a recipient of state aid. We get state aid every month. And we also have a formula by which we give state aid to the 36 townships, to the ambulance services, to the fire districts, etc. It filters its way down, and part of it stays with our road fund, and part of it stays with our general fund. We also have the Prairie Dog funds that I talked about, $1.954 million the last biennium, and I expect to get exactly that amount, if not a few bucks more, maybe this time around. Hopefully the state is contemplating the effects of inflation, and maybe they'll give us a few more dollars. All right, we have projects on top of projects that we have no way to fund those. No way that stretch of highway happens, okay, without those Prairie Dog funds. And yes, we applied for a variety of different sources of money to tap into that, and were rejected, because guess what? Elsewhere in North Dakota, they too have needs on top of needs on top of needs. And you heard it here first if you haven't heard it before. This county is full of bridges. We have two main rivers that go through here. We've got Garrison Diversion from the 80s that goes through here. Bridges all over that. What do you think is going to become our biggest need in the not too distant future in Wells County? Bridges. In fact, one of the things I'm going to talk to you about is a capital project account, which will be new in our budget this year, which is about 45% of the increase that we have in Wells County, is to get the grant match money that we would have to be able to replace bridges. We've got one that's over the James River just north of Feznan on County Highway 1 that hopefully will be replaced in 2026. And somebody else will pick up 80% of the tab, but we have to be able to pick up 20%, which is about 400 grand to replace that bridge. So it's about a $2 million project, give or take. We have one that's getting replaced south of Harvey, down by Doug Fike's place. That will not cost Wells County residents 1 cent directly, because the money is all coming from outside of Wells County. And yes, you paid taxes in some other way, shape, or form to be able to make that a possibility. But those are just the tip of the iceberg of the needs that we're gonna have living in a rural area where there's not as many people. That didn't shrink the number of road miles we have. It didn't shrink the need for an ambulance service here. It doesn't, make the fire department's headaches any smaller, okay? School districts still gotta operate, the city still gotta operate, the county still gotta operate. So then we also have, federal highway tax distribution. We have emergency management. They do a near 50-50 split of our emergency manager's salary and benefits. NDSU extension, our extension officer, our extension agent, about half of her salary is paid by NDSU. They pay all of her benefits, okay? And our contribution is the other half of her salary and the other office expenses. So there's all kinds of money that's coming in and helping run these agencies. Not all of it is being provided by local taxpayers. In fact, not even close, okay? That said, when I went out and met with these townships, in the odd number years, when the Prairie Dog money came the last time around, I was able to show the townships that only about 1/3 of their revenue comes from property taxes. 2/3 of it is coming from someplace else, whether it's state aid or Prairie Dog money or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of people that are invested in Wells County that do not live in Wells County. And that is actually what I am gonna close on before we get to the Q&A piece. Okay, we do talk about property taxes, and you're welcome to come up and see this. If you're sitting anywhere other than where Cheryl or Amy are sitting, you probably can't see this stuff, but come up and take a look at it. It'll break down where property tax goes generally in North Dakota, where it comes from, okay? You'll see that all the counties here that either reduce their mill rate or reduce their taxes overall, of which Wells County is one of those. That was last year, not this year, okay? You'll find out what our various mill rates are in Wells County. And again, we have that budget hearing tomorrow, so this isn't final until tomorrow morning. But there's all kinds of information up here. Here's a pie chart of where the county resources go. That'll be part of the budget presentation that I make tomorrow for our county commission and so on. So a lot of good information up here. And what I typically see is people who don't want the services that they consider most important to them to go away. There's some other ones that maybe don't matter as much, but they matter to somebody else. And they're all part of our fabric as a community and as a society. And we have to keep those things in mind. All right, and with that, do you have any questions that are specific to the county before we get into Q&A? Yes, ma'am.
What do you get each month from the state for Wells County?
It varies dramatically. We get state aid every month, and I'm gonna tell you the grand total range, okay, and again, we give
For 12
money.
months, or
What's that?
the grand total for like 12-month period is what you're gonna
No, monthly. It ranges, the lowest I ever recall it being is 40,000 in a month. And the highest is I've ever seen it has been 85,000 in a month. And a lot of that has to do with the revenues of the state ebbing and flowing throughout the course of the year. For example, you might see it go up right before Christmas, you know, because a lot of people are shopping and a lot of sales tax revenue and things of that nature, etc. But it ebbs and flows, but it would be unfair for me to characterize this and say any particular percentages, but needless to say, a portion of that goes to our road fund, a portion of it goes to the ambulance districts, the fire districts, the townships, and only a portion of it stays in our general fund. But yes, we do, we keep about half of it in our general fund.
Does it stay the same from year to year, just
No.
in that range?
Nope, it's all based on revenues of the state of North Dakota. They have a formula by which they split their monies out.
Thank you.
Anything else that's specific to the county? Yes, Brian.
On the way in tonight, I stopped by my son's to look at something. I got there, his shop door was open, his insulation trailer was open, nobody around. I'm going, what's going on? So I finally called him. Well, I'm at a fire. I was moving a piece of equipment away from home and I just had to take off to the fire hall. So he dropped everything. And I know that's my son and I'm proud of him. But here's the thing. I've been on a few record calls with the boys, and our fire departments are very much involved with traffic control. Our ambulance people are there, and I will say Wells County is very lucky to have the fire departments that they have, but mostly the willingness for people to leave their stuff, sit, and take off to the unknown, because they don't know what's gonna happen when they get there. So kudos to them. So whenever you see the fire trucks, give a thought for them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else? With that, are there any general questions? It could be to any one of these individuals or just comments that you might have. Maybe it's a question you've been dying to ask about property taxes. Yes?
I have a question I've been dying to ask about property taxes. My property tax went up 125% this year. What's to say that's not gonna happen every year? I mean,
There is no predictive value offered by me, and certainly nobody that's sitting on the stage. Obviously, there is a limit. There is a limit, and it's based on, you know, every mill has a cap on it. Whether it's at the city level, the county level, the school district level. For example, in a school district, you can't levy more than 70 mills in your general fund. You can't. Now, the only exception to that would be is if valuations fell and it took 71 mills to get what you got last year. That is a possibility. But,
I'm not in Harvey.
okay, and the
So
biggest.
Did anybody else's go up 125%? I mean.
I would have to believe, and Jana, there might be a circumstance, an outlier out there. Your valuation would have almost had to have risen for it to go up that much. And I don't know your property, I can't vouch for that.
Okay, and it didn't go up at all previous, you know, for several years.
That's probably.
And that's probably normal for it not to go up several years.
Well, wasn't it a new company that was being used to do these land valuations, and isn't it?
That was only for industrial.
Only for like Pheasant Co-op and Arthur companies. We had a company called Vanguard that's out here that specializes in Weckerly Farms would be another one that unfortunately got that treatment, I think. And so, other questions that you might have? Yes?
A year ago, I bought a house in Harvey. When I got my real estate tax statement, it's 27% higher than what I paid for that house. I complained, I went in front of the city, I went in front of the county. Not one institution wrote me a letter and told me why they didn't do it. They said, you're an outlier. In my research in this town, there's an awful lot of outliers that are getting taxed 20-30% more than that house is valued at. And this was an independent sale, no sham, no relation, nothing. So I don't trust the valuation. In that meeting, she said, we're going to raise farmland up to the value of what it's being sold for. She had a prediction of $4 or $5 million increase in elevators, and that happened. So I don't trust that lady's taxes won't go up next year, the next year, 20 years from now. I understand you're complaining to people that look at your wage, what's going to happen. Look at your taxes are going to be increased. They'll be unaffordable to the people of this county. It won't matter.
Yep, and you know, and can be sympathetic to any individual circumstance, and Jerry always likes to hear me say this, so now's my chance, right? You know what I'm gonna say next, right? Okay, just like the rest of you, I pay all kinds of different taxes. Okay, I pay taxes to the federal government, I pay taxes to the state government, I pay taxes to county government, school district, you name it, I pay all of those. And I'm not always delighted to pay my federal tax bill.
I wasn't even given the courtesy of a call back from neither the city nor your county. None.
But did you attend the meeting? Did you attend the meeting? Tell me you did, because you attended a county commission meeting.
Absolutely, I did there.
Absolutely. So you got your answer.
No, I didn't.
Wow.
They just dismissed.
I
did not get an answer to that.
I would beg to differ, but that being said, you know, when I write a check to the US Treasury, and I know I have an obligation as a citizen to do that, I never see, feel, or understand where my money's going. Even when I write a check to Bismarck, which I do every year, I don't get to see firsthand necessarily all the time where my money goes. But when I write a check to Wells County, I see every single day where my money goes. Every day. I see the ambulance going. Hopefully it's not to my house, but I see them. Someday it will be. I see the fire trucks doing their thing. I worked in that school for 15 years. Okay? I know where it goes. I work in county government now. I know where it goes. I see where it goes. I see the good work that's being done. Our emergency manager in Wells County got a $2 million grant for the Pheasant Lagoon. $2 million. That is huge in Wells County. And that's because of an employee for county government who didn't make 1 cent for writing that grant, but will be a beneficiary because she does reside in Fessenden. But that's a big deal. And having, I believe, it's not the oldest, I think it's the second oldest lagoon in the United States or in North America, that's really not a badge of honor. And they're darn lucky because, you know, when I flush my toilet, I expect that stuff to go someplace else. Okay, that's part of what taxes do for you. Amy?
Do you know where the next closest state is that doesn't have property taxes?
I don't know of any.
Does anyone in the room know where a state in the country that doesn't have property taxes?
There is none.
I don't know of any. So, there aren't any.
So this would, if this passed, this would be the first state in the nation to
Correct.
get rid of property?
Yep.
Well, I mean, taxes are technically very unconstitutional.
Gosh, I think one of the things in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution is a power to tax, and I'm guessing that every other governmental entity, if you go back to look at the Mayflower Compact and things like that, before this was even a country, the first law of any governmental entity is always what first? It's a tax law. Because what are you going to operate on if you don't have that? So to think that you're just going to do away with this stuff, I don't want to be the legislator here. I am not. But I always learned growing up that taxes were a three-legged stool in our state. Sales tax, income tax, and property tax. Well, income tax is all but gone. Sales tax is there, absolutely, in full support. If this goes away, you better be damn good on a pogo stick. Because there is no other two legs. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. If this passes, will it raise the income, on our paychecks, our income tax will go up or?
Well, again, that's a legislative question,
Right.
but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that, on November 6th, it would become scramble mode if it does. And you'll be able to go to bed. You may not have an official answer. In fact, elections aren't official until 13 days after they're over. But that being said, you typically will know the results by watching your television screen that night. And if it is, would you describe it any other way as scramble mode?
It's a fair statement.
Okay, let's not scare people.
No.
necessarily.
But somebody asked and.
But no, because that's not necessarily accurate. Yes, the legislature will have to do something, there's no doubt about it. But the state has the money to cover this. We will not lose services. We will not,
For how long though, Vanessa? Do you know for sure? And I asked two of you were at a meeting that I was at, and I'm gonna ask this question, and I was serious when I asked it. Neither one of you answered it that day. But I asked you, okay, if this passes, how does it get undone later? Your turn.
One of the people.
Is there any time limit on when you can go back?
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
I don't know, because the measure doesn't spell that out purposefully, because if it did, then we wouldn't have local control, but that's where the local control piece is. And it will work as long as the legislature decides to make it work, and they can.
You can absolutely, and we don't even have to be talking about legacy fund dollars or oil extraction taxes, for a lack of a better term, prior or what have you. But the fact of the matter is, that money has to come from somewhere in order to be transferred on. And where is predominantly all of that money that people perceive to be locked up for no purposeful use? Where is it coming from? Oil money. Well, who was living in this state in the 1980s?
I was.
And?
And when that dries up, there's no.
it won't
Okay,
dry up.
I actually lived in Williston, and it was after the early boom and then prior to the current boom. Actually, I liked the people an awful lot. It was hard for me to move away from the people, but it was not hard to leave the city. It was a dump. Okay, now it isn't today, and Watford City isn't a dump. In fact, Watford City, I used to take baseball teams out there in the late 80s and early 90s. Watford City was just like Harvey, only dustier. It was just like Harvey, only dustier. Obviously, it's a completely different place now because of oil. Yes.
I'd like the person that put this bill together, this measure. He's here, sitting in the back. Would you allow him to speak, please?
A minute or two? Yeah, sure. Rick, you want to say a word or two or 10? 15 is the limit.
Thanks. Yeah, real quick. I think it's great that you're having this. It's good to have informative sessions. I spoke in Williston 2 nights ago, and I kind of opened saying we shouldn't let this be something that divides us. The people that are for it think it's really good for North Dakota. The people that are opposed to it think that it's not good for North Dakota. We're trying to do what's best for North Dakota, so let's not become enemies over this. A lot of what the presentation has to do with is the importance of what property taxes currently pay for and how necessary they are, so on and so forth. But it's really important to understand that the measure does not take away funding. It changes the method of funding. It simply changes the method of funding. So when I look at your, I believe it's your house taxes, this year they're up to just a little over $3,000. And so the increase for this year was, I think around $250. So if this passes, the effect on you is going to be that next year, that $3,000 stays in your pocket. The increase...
My wife will spend it.
Excellent point. She's going to put it into the economy, which is great for everyone who's doing business here in Harvey. So the $250, if that's the increase, that's what you may see when the city and county and the other subdivisions levy a tax or fee to cover the difference. Because what this does is simply 2 things. It says no more valuation-based property tax. It doesn't say no more funding. No more valuation-based property tax, and the state must replace no less than the amount that's levied to every single political subdivision. There is not a single dollar lost in funding. Going forward, the subdivisions need to change how they do things. And it's confusing, it's going to be work in the beginning. But fortunately, because the state is picking up everything at that moment, the increase, the amount that has to be levied, not on assessed value, but on however the locals choose to do it, is going to be a very small amount. Now, the state, we can argue whether the state has the money or not. We need $2.5 to $3 billion per biennium to replace the current levels of property tax. What the legislature will do, what the appropriations committee will do is say, okay, total forecasted revenue is going to be about $21 billion. We know that $2.5 to $3 billion needs to replace the property tax. That means we have to live on a budget of $17.5 to $18 billion. Well, that's 2021. I think we can live on a 2021 budget. The other thing I would say is that this actually gives more control. I know it's very, very strong. Oh, loss of control, loss of control. I was shocked at what I read for the editorial for the local paper. It was so I don't even know what part of it I could actually glean out to say this is maybe slightly accurate. There is no loss of control. Think about this. The state must replace no less than the amount levied. No less. That means there are no strings attached. The state has nothing to do with it. What they do is to go to the tax commissioner's book, statistical report on property tax, go around page 21, page 22. That lists out what every county gets. They don't have to put any work into it. And there's no say in your budget. What would they do with your budget? You determine your budget, they replace the amount. And then you know, for when you make the budgets you want, what you need above what the state is replacing, because that's how you do it now. There's state relief, there's Prairie Dog, there's other things. You determine what you need above what the state replaces and what you generate in other fees, and then you levy that as a property tax. What we do when this passes is exactly the same thing. The state replaces, you keep your $3,000, your wife spends it, the city and county then levy a tax however they see fit. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all. How you do it in Harvey is going to be different than how they do it in Fargo. Because right now there's a tremendous amount of restrictions. When I hear, for instance, ambulance, you're maxed out. Why are you maxed out? Because the state put that restriction on you. When this passes and the implementing language that's required, you no longer have that handcuff. You guys are handcuffed all over the place with property taxes. It's completely controlled. We talked about valuations. You must put at a 95% sales ratio, give or take 5%. There's no choice. You can't say, well, let's take it easy on the folks. You're forced. So I won't go on.
So I have a question though, okay,
Yes.
so that's all fine with your tax dollars. The people, just so I think we need to all understand, there's still gonna be a bill that comes from the city of Harvey because they have special assessments. It's not gonna pay your special assessments.
It is not gonna pay special
So
assessments.
don't think that you're not gonna get a bill from somebody. Your special assessments are still
You're
going
gonna
to
get,
special.
you're gonna get, we'll say 2 bills.
Right.
Because I'm not trying to blow smoke.
No,
right?
but I don't know that people understand
Right.
that. They
You will
think when
pay
you
for-
get a $2,500
You will pay for
bill.
special assessments. You will pay for any property tax that's currently obligated to bonding. You'll still pay that. Now that's almost everywhere. That's very, statewide, it's a very, very small amount percentage-wise. But you will pay those things. This doesn't get rid of that. And you will pay whatever tax is going to replace the property tax mechanism for the increases that are needed in the future. Nobody's expecting or wanting, or at least, I'll change it, I'll say, nobody's expecting a free lunch.
But I think they are.
Well-
I think that's what some people think, is that we can.
And Dr. Becker, in all fairness,
Then you're not reading what's on.
That's
You-
true, they
you can-
don't, they
Information.
don't.
just
They don't.
for the folks that don't know where you live, tell us where you live.
I live in Bismarck.
Okay, and you have mechanism on top of mechanism, right behind and right in front of mechanisms to be able to generate revenues. We do not have that in rural North Dakota.
You know, I hear that a lot, and I appreciate that as an argument, but where your mechanism right now for the increases that you need for your budgets is from the people who live in the community. You're going to tax them by increasing their property taxes. So your resource is the people. That's where you're going to derive the income you need to fund your budget. That's all you need.
You got a method in mind?
Absolutely I do, you bet. And there's more than one way to skin a cat. And like I say, you can tailor it, and you guys are gonna have work to do. I think that's okay. I think it's worth it for the benefit of the people, because yes, you still are gonna have your $275 in a different method, but you keep $3,000 in your wife's purse, and that makes it better for everyone in North Dakota.
Mr. Becker, what happens with in lieu of taxes? Those companies that pay in lieu of taxes, and we no longer have property taxes, can they not say, well, we don't need to pay them either then if they?
No, that's not true. So, the lady is talking about, in certain places, and specifically the scariest one that they put out is that we could lose the gross production tax on oil. Because it says, that it's in lieu of, that means in place of, property tax. Okay, but the Legislative Council came out in 2012, and they came out again last week and put out a memo that clarified, the lawyers for the legislature said that this measure will not affect in lieu of taxes. The gross production tax for oil is not affected, period. And it makes sense, because the measure does away with valuation-based property tax. You could put on a tax per acre. You could put on a tax per household on property. So it doesn't eliminate all property taxes. It eliminates all property tax the way we're currently doing it. But that's in lieu of property tax, and it's based on how it's phrased in the Century Code, which has no bearing. But nevertheless,
But I've just got all, like the oil revenue, but other things that are in lieu of property tax.
right. So there are, I don't want to take up so much time, but I'm happy to answer. So you let me know when you want me to stop, right? I respect that you've given me the time to do this. There are two types of in lieu of property taxes. Those that are based on valuation, those that are not. Okay, and then it's kind of the same with centrally assessed. They're centrally assessed based on valuation, centrally assessed based on not. So if it is based on valuation, whether it's in lieu of or whether it's centrally assessed, those would go away. If it's not based on a valuation, those would not go away. right? So one of the things that legislators are going to be introducing is that there are pipelines, for example, and some electric transmission lines are based on value, property value. So those would go away. So they're gonna introduce legislation so that's converted to a non-value based, centrally assessed tax, so those don't go away. So that there's less revenue that the state needs to replace. So it's just, boom, it's done in lieu of, like gross production for oil is not at risk.
I have one more question, just because, I'm sorry again. So, what happens with the hunter that comes from Minnesota or Missouri and buys up hundreds of acres of land in North Dakota? And he pays no property taxes?
Well, and that's a very good question and concern that people have brought up. What about out-of-staters? What about big corporations? We have to keep in mind that the vast majority of the benefit is going to the people that live here, regardless of anything else. Now, so I think we don't want to prevent ourselves and everyone we know and love from getting a huge tax benefit because we don't want the hunter from Detroit Lakes to get it. Now, what I would say is that the fear of them just swooping in and buying up all the property is not warranted. Right now, we compete with out-of-staters for property. Every time it goes up, we are competing with out-of-staters. The perceived value to having the current amount of property tax paid for by the state is nice, but it is equally nice for out-of-staters as it is for in-staters. And so we continue to bid for the land with that increased perception of value. It's the same as if you decide you want to buy on a highly productive agricultural property, you're expecting to pay more. Because that expense of property tax up to the current level is no longer there, the perceived value is greater. But we know that future tax increases are still going to be applied by some mechanism that you decide. And so it's not as though they get off scot-free forever. It's a huge benefit right now to whoever has property. Every single business, every single small mom and pop business, even Walmart. People hate the idea that Walmart gets it. I hate to tell you, Walmart and the big box stores are already getting it for 10 to 15 years of typical property tax abatement. So this just puts us all on the same playing field. And the very last thing I would say is what I was hearing from this panel actually is very supportive of the measure. Because you talked about how it's tragic that not only the public, but even elected officials in charge of property tax do not understand it. And then you spent an hour and a half explaining it. And it's still very difficult to understand. If you quiz everyone, I don't know that they're gonna get it. And it's one of the 3 major ways to tax people, but they don't understand it. How can you go to a meeting and confidently defend yourself when you don't understand the process?
I do understand it, so I'm.
No, not you, as a person, as a citizen. Obviously you understand it, but we want the citizens to stand up for themselves. If they don't understand it, how can they? And then the valuation problems. There's so many things wrong. Most people will agree that valuations and mill levies are not a great way to tax people. This addresses that.
Thank you, Dr. Becker, for sharing. I will make a singular point in regards to that, and I know that everybody has that generic thought that every year taxes go up. And sometimes they do, and often they do. Okay, whether it's one of these political subdivisions or another one, they often do go up. Just like everything else goes up. Things cost more money. And you try and find the best path forward, whatever that may happen to be. But there is something I do know, and this is gonna be a stumbling block, no question about it. Obviously, it's much higher in the rest of North Dakota than it is in Wells County. Anybody want to take a shot at the percentage of property in Wells County that is owned by somebody who doesn't live in North Dakota? It's over 21%. Over 21% of the valuation in Wells County is owned by out-of-state interests.
Do they generate income off of it?
What's that?
Do they generate income off of it?
I'm sure they do.
Then it should go to the income tax because they're getting by without paying any tax.
Well, but then you get into a whole different matter, and for better or for worse, North Dakota has all but eliminated income tax. I mean, it's not eliminated, but it's it's microscopic at this point, I would say that, so. And not necessarily the kind of places that you're talking about, but anybody wanna take a venture of a guess at who the highest property taxpayers in Wells County are?
2 railroads and the elevator.
Okay, that's 4 of the top 5. Arthur Companies, well, BNSF is number 2. We still call it Stutlien in our tax system, but it's CP Rail is number 1. And then Arthur Companies and Pheasant Co-op, that's 4 of the top 5. Also in the top 10, oil pipelines running through Wells County. Okay, so yeah, it's 8 out of 10 in Wells County. In fact, the number up here, I don't know if I can find it quick enough for you or not. Of the 3 highest taxpayers in each county, out-of-state companies pay 82% of those taxes. Now, we don't have Walmart here, and we don't have Target here, and we don't have big grand hotels here or anything like that, but we do have some of those companies that I just talked about, which is why it's only 21% here. Significantly higher in Bismarck and Fargo and Grand Forks and Minot and Williston and so on and so forth. So this is a challenge, okay? And it's not really the reason that I wanted to be here tonight, was not necessarily to talk about it, but I knew, everybody who asked me, I knew it would be a topic of discussion. So it's a scary component, and I think of it as more because of how do you undo it after it's done? How do you get the genie back in the bottle? And that's a challenge. So, you know the old adage, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Becker indicated, and he's absolutely correct, is that economic development give property tax abatements all the time in your development. By doing this measure, passing this, you're giving an economic development to every taxpayer in this county. You want economic development in the state? Put everybody on the same page, because that's when things will happen. I mean, if you give me a tax break, I'm sure I'll spend the money, but that's gonna spend somebody else gonna get money. And that's the difference. We give that property tax abatement all the time. All the time.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention, it seems appropriate in here that I've talked to many people about, you know, when they do improvements on their homes, and they're like afraid that Jeff's gonna find out because then their taxes are gonna increase. And so
She is the renovation police.
yeah, exactly. So if this, I don't know how I'm gonna vote personally, but if this did pass, then that wouldn't be an issue, right?
I would think the vast, well, maybe not,
Okay,
but
maybe not. But, and then,
I would guess most of when you reassess has to do with building permits and things of that nature, so it's real renovation. A paintbrush would hardly cause that.
you said like the whole thing would sort of fall apart or something like that, if this passes, you said something like that. Did you like pad the budget a bit in case this does, so there was?
We did not.
Oh, you didn't?
Our taxes were low. Right now, our levy is at 76% of what it could be across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? When I was a superintendent of schools here, we were routinely in the bottom 15 or 20% in terms of what we levied statewide.
Okay.
I was always very proud of that because we provided an excellent education here at bargain basement prices, but it's hard to keep up with that sometimes. And what we've experienced in the last couple of years economically, and I talked to you about the valuations, I put it in print in the handout that I gave you. Our valuations have not gone up. Now, there's individual properties that have, mine included, and you can see it right there on those sheets. In fact, the very first year that we lived in our house, our valuation went up $34,000 because I paid $34,000 more than the assessed value on my property. But I just had it reassessed. Jenna, look over there once. The assessment on my property was $365, just done earlier this year. And what's its value on there? I think it's $207. So it's nowhere near market value, and I know that.
And Dan?
Yeah.
And this is based off of 2024, not 2025 budget, am I right?
Well,
If this property tax measure passes?
It's based on, that's the way it reads, is 2024, and I don't know what's meant by the assessment, if it's the 24 tax year or not. Because this is a 24 tax year, even though, because you actually pay your taxes after the fact. You don't pay them in advance, you pay them after the fact, yes.
It's the 2024 levy, so it's the 2025 budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think people need to understand a couple of things. First of all, when Rick throws out the $19 million budget.
Mostly federal money.
$19 budget. There's a lot of federal and trust flow-through money that go in there. The actual general fund budget for the state of North Dakota is $6 billion, a little over $6 billion. So we're talking about 1/2 of the general fund budget will go away if this measure passes. Now, I think everybody in the panel tonight talked about the local issues that could be at risk, depending on your perspective. You know, they may or may not, but that's all the local issues. I can also, nobody has said anything about the state programs that everybody in Harvey and in District 14 and in North Dakota depend on for services, including human service issues like nursing homes, hospitals, senior programs. They're all general fund obligations, and that money is not going to be there. Because the general fund, without some type of a tax increase or some replacement of those dollars, it certainly won't be there on day one. So let's put this in perspective. We're not talking $3.2 billion less than 19. We're talking 1/2 of the general fund budget. Anybody that's worked at, and I know Vanessa's on the school board, you take half of your general fund budget and see how you can operate your school district.
Except the budget's not just based on the general fund, and you know that.
It's not, but that's the most important part of your budget is your general fund.
But it's just.
No question about it, and we all have our thoughts about the federal government and the debt they've got themselves into, but yeah, 2/3 of our state budget is federal money, for better or for worse. It is. And it's not 2/3 of our budget, thankfully, but we do rely on a lot of outside sources, and my biggest concern isn't whether or not the state could, at least in the immediate future, fund the basic principles of our budget. It's all of the state aid components, the Prairie Dog components, because I have a feeling that those things are all gonna get wrapped into that $3.2 billion missing money. And it would have to. And so that is a huge obstacle for counties like us in rural North Dakota to overcome that. Yes, sir.
Part of the problem with like our legislatures and stuff is they feel that they're losing control. They want to be the kings. That's why they have a measure 2 where they want to make it harder for the people to change things. People need to look at measure 2. And that's a continuing resolution.
Want a sound piece of advice?
Yeah, go for it.
Anytime you're not sure about something, always vote no. Okay?
Yeah.
Anytime you're not sure about something,
Who
always
voted
vote
for
no.
you?
What's that?
Who voted you into office?
No one.
Okay, that should have been on the ballot for us people to vote for too.
Well, it's not, so I guess.
That was.
Am I doing it for John?
That was taking power away from the people too.
No, it isn't.
Never has been an elected.
Well, it has been an elected position, but you elect the commissioners and.
See, they're the kings then.
Well, but what can you do every 4 years?
Vote them out.
There you go.
There was a hearing and you could attend to oppose that.
But I think they're 5 of the sharpest guys in Wells County. They picked me? No, I'm just kidding. All right, any other questions for the good of the order? And it doesn't have to be about Measure 4 or anything else for that matter, as long as it's related to property tax. With that, thank you, oh, Mr. Sims.
Where did the $500 credit that we got on our property taxes, where did that come from?
That came from legacy fund earnings,
But whose idea was it?
the legislature.
Who in the legislature had that idea first?
Well, it was the Senate.
I think he's driving at a certain gubernatorial candidate.
Well, we've spoke a lot with Richard on property, or, income tax. There was some that wanted to eliminate income tax totally. A lot of us dug in and said, no, we've gotta do something with property tax. A lot of negotiations, trying to figure out how we're gonna do this. We wound up with a $500 primary, residence, credit and some income tax reduction, so it was kind of a hodgepodge. I would still argue that the House really wanted income tax relief, and it was at the end of the session when we spent a lot of time in the conference committee to kind of hash those.
So my bigger point is the legislature can deal with these problems, if somebody steps on them a little bit.
Well, once again, we don't collect property tax. I often ask people how often they've gone to the county commission meeting or the school board meeting or the city meetings. Nobody goes. But usually when they complain about their taxes, they do know how to find us. So that's where the local decisions get made. We're gonna sit there in Bismarck, you know what, we represent 7 counties. Cass County has 30 legislators. There's gonna be a little different whole, there's a lot of pressure, coming from the bigger cities. And we have to fight tooth and nail really to defend what we
So
think is important.
my bigger point is, rather than take a bomb and blow up what we're doing right now and wonder what's gonna happen, why don't we just talk to our legislators more and see if they can generate some better ideas or good ideas to help relieve the property tax. That seems to be what everybody's.
They've had 2 sessions.
The property taxes are so high, maybe we can figure out through the legislator how to make the problems better, rather than taking a bomb and blowing it all up and wondering what's gonna be the next day.
They've had 2 sessions to do something and they haven't.
Just going back to 2013, when Dan talks about buying the mills down, the state picked up a little over $1 billion.
Right.
That did reduce your property tax a little for a short period. 2 sessions ago, we took over the 20 mills that we were funding for social services. The state picked up, that's the tune of
$250 million.
$250 million. That should have lowered our property tax. But as Dan spoke, inflation continues to drive those costs, and valuations keep going up. And my neighbors should be selling my house because everybody's getting a lot of money for their houses now. But things change, and I know there's already discussion on $1,000 for the primary tax thing. I don't know where that's gonna land. I mean, we're way out here. We've got a lot of things to do, but there's gonna be a lot of focus on trying to do something more for property tax.
Yep.
How much legacy fund money is invested out of country?
The legacy fund is almost $11 billion, and the legacy fund is invested with internal and external managers throughout the country. Primarily, and there's a list of what they can invest in, including real estate, equities, index funds, cash. There's a small amount in global markets. I don't know what's out of state, but we have passed legislation that we don't want to invest in any adversarial nations, primarily China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. So, those things they're really fluid. It's not a lot. I think they've gotten the message. The Chinese market isn't very good, but that's the invest, and the legacy fund is looking for about a 6% return. Not very aggressively yet trying to bring revenue back. We hope to have $600 million in income to spend at the next session. So, but there again, we're paying bonds off for part of the diversion. We paid for the tax issue. I think there's two other things mainly that got funded out of that.
Yes, sir.
I just, real quick, two comments. I just don't think it's really fair or accurate to talk about the general fund alone. North Dakota has what many of elected officials jokingly refer to as the second general fund, which is the SIP fund. And in fact, special fund spending, not including federal spending, has gone up by 428% in the last 14 years. That's skyrocketing. The SIP fund is going to have a tremendous amount of money. Right now, the current balance at the beginning of this next biennium is supposed to be about $3 billion. It's actually going to be a lot more than that because the legislature forecasted $62 barrel oil for the remainder of this biennium, whereas the federal government short-term energy forecasts are saying that's going to be 30% higher than that. There's going to be a ton of money. The other thing that I would say is reforms the gentleman brought up. Yeah, it's be a great idea. This is scary because there are unknowns. And it's work. And people hate work and people hate the unknown. So let's rely on the legislature. The problem is 20 reform bills have gone before the legislature between the time that the last measure failed in 2012 and now, and they all failed, and including several recently, which included multiple bills to cap valuations, multiple bills to cap overall taxing, bills to eliminate the tax on primary residence, bills to freeze the tax for seniors and the disabled. These all failed. The legislature has not been interested in providing reform. They've had the opportunity. I was there for 10 years. They're not interested. That's why this measure is here now.
That's normally a $20 fine, but it's much more.
In favor of a huge reform, and I said, Doug, if this passes, I'm not even going to try and do an initiated measure because that's good. It's not as good as the measure, but it's good. And it failed in the Senate.
And being a legislator for the amount of time that you were, you know how difficult that is to get things accomplished. And I have no doubt that, you know, North Dakota's never met a tax that it liked, that's for sure. Okay? So as a result of that, I'm sure good efforts have been made, whether it's in the area of property tax or income tax, which I think is totally unnecessary, but that's a whole nother matter. But it's hard. It's hard to get things through. Any other questions or comments?
One more statement.
Yes.
A lot of you remember the old personal property tax, right? You remember that? You used to come out and count your chickens and count your pigs and count your cattle and count your machinery. You got all kinds of tax on there. Well, the legislature did repeal it, except for one item. You know what that item is? Mobile home tax. They are still paying that personal property tax. It sits on a lot in some city or whatever. They pay rent on that lot. That lot is taxed. Those people who can't afford it the most are still getting taxed twice. The legislature, for 40 years, haven't touched it. I called up KFYR when the tax commissioner was on, I brought it up. He didn't even know what I was talking about. That's how well the legislature works in the repealing new taxes.
Anything else? Yes.
Is there foreclosures in Wells County this year due to property, not being able to pay property tax?
Well, we won't know until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, November 19th for certain. But as of right now, 13 properties, 10 of which are empty lots, will be presented to the commissioners tomorrow for assessments. There are 3. One is a vacant business. The other 2 are houses, and I don't believe anyone lives in either one of them. One of them for sure, I can't tell if somebody lives in the other one. I'll find out very soon, but yes. If there is nothing else, I want to thank you so much and for attending tonight. Appreciate it.